Hello there, long time no see, welcome or welcome back. I hope you've had a good summer. My name is Jack, and I am finally back with a new video. Many moons ago, I was invited to try out a demo of a new game, Winter Survival Prologue, and obviously I was like, hell yeah, except then I forgot to reply to the email, and 2023 has played out like I'm in a really bad game of The Sims, so any time I've had to work on video projects went out the window. My bad, but I'm here now. So of course, as suggested by the name, the version I'm playing in this video is a prologue, just a snippet of what's to come in the full game, which I believe will be coming out early next year. I gotta mention that I did actually play part of this game once shortly after I got the invite, but I never finished it or made it into a video because for some reason, despite running games with higher specs all the time, my PC does not agree with this one no matter how much I mess with the settings, so a lot of the footage was basically unusable from lag. Unfortunately, that still seemed to be a bit of a problem at some points this time around, though not as bad, but still, my apologies in advance for any screen tearing that may occur. Alright, enough rambling, let's jump in.
It's gonna be okay. Just breathe. Are you hurt?
No.
Good. Remember the cave? Go there and hide. I'm gonna look for Mike.
No way. I'll never get there alone.
You will. Just keep the radio on. I'll tell you what to do.
So the game opened with our friend Joel waking me up from what we can assume is a bad fall or accident of some sort, and with urgency he guided me via walkie-talkie through a scenario that had the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. Wolves surrounded me like sharks in deep water, and all I had to protect myself were Joel's cues and so-called tall grass that was much too short for comfort.
Distract them. See that crow over there? Try to scare it away.
He instructed me to scare off a bird as a distraction to get rid of the wolves, but they didn't budge, and I was worried I'd just have to make a run for it.
There's nothing I can use to distract them.
Until they seemed to catch wind of something else and ran off, and my stomach sank thinking they had found Joel, but all I could do was run on. I sprinted off, thinking I had lost him, until I was halfway up a ledge and heard Joel come back on the walkie-talkie, barking out an order to stay still, and I'd be damned if I was gonna ignore that. I froze on the spot, arms aching, and watched in horror as through the grass appeared the silhouette of a huge bear. All I could do once it ambled on was keep moving at the urging of Joel, every snapping twig making me jump, tensing up at each turn. I managed to creep through the trees at a snail's pace until all of a sudden, growling and barking filled my ears on either side of me, Joel yelling at me to run, and I took off without risking fully turning around to see what was following me. I didn't stop until I had dragged myself up a ledge and felt like the barks were at a safe distance, chancing a look behind me before turning and entering the mouth of a stunning but eerie cave. I wasn't sure I was fully safe, but Joel came in on the radio and some tasks began coming up, so I let myself relax a little bit. I flicked on my flashlight and walked deeper into the cave, opening my bag and getting a look at the inventory system, which I thought was pretty cool looking while still keeping the classic survival game vibes. I got out my cantina, only got a few sips out of it before it was empty, so I walked around in search of the dripping water I could hear nearby, eventually finding a puddle and scooping some water out. Just as I did though, there was a clattering noise coming from the entrance of the cave, and I jumped, whipping around, but breathed a sigh of relief when I realized it was Joel.
You scared me.
Sorry. I think I'm still in stealth mode. I need to catch my breath.
What about Mike?
Can't see anything in this weather. We need to wait till morning.
Okay, so then what?
We need to rest and eat.
Right. Fire. I can make a fire. You taught me how.
Great. Make it somewhere nearby. And check my backpack. The rest should be just lying around.
Our friend Mike was still missing though, but Joel said it was too dark to go looking now, so we settled down in the cave for the night. I learned how to collect materials to make a campfire, and I put some of the meat on to cook, Joel and I finally starting to relax again when a haunting growl echoed through the cave.
I'm starving.
Not long now. We're gonna have a nice... Shit, hide!
He urged me to hide, and I panicked, flailing around looking for anywhere I could be safe, but when I got close enough to a hole in the rocks, the game sort of shimmied me into them, which I was grateful for. I watched with my heart thumping as a giant, bear-shaped shadow appeared on the rock wall, hearing it sniff around the fire before it shuffled away. Joel said it was safe a little too soon for my comfort, but I went with it, climbing out of my hideaway and staring nervously at the direction the bear had left. I commented on the huge footprints on the ground, asking the classic,
Bears don't eat people, right?
Only met with silence from Joel. I checked the food on the fire and ate it despite it looking like it was burnt to a crisp, then put the rest of the meat on, eating that too. At that point, Joel suggested it was time for bed.
I'll keep watch, then we'll switch.
Thanks.
Tomorrow we'll scout the area. Try to find help or at least shelter.
What about Mike?
Don't worry. We'll find him too.
I put down my sleeping bag and promptly passed out. My sleep was anything but restful though, filled with echoes of voices in my dreams, until growling began to break through the sleep fog, and I realized Joel was yelling at me in real life to run. I whipped through the trees, the rising sun half blinding me as I came to a stop in front of some rustling bushes. The giant bear emerged, charging at me, and all I could do was back away until I lost my footing and went plummeting off the cliffside. When I came to, it was night again, the sky filled with beautiful neon lights. I was near freezing and had lost all my gear during the fall, so without a way to contact Joel, all I could do was get moving, apparently towards the hot springs to warm up. I crept between patches of tall grass, coming to a big gate and a goods crate, but
It's pointless. My fingers are frozen stiff.
my hands were too frozen to get it open, and I needed something to break the gate down with, so I had to find another route. I walked along a path, tensed up, anticipating a growl at any moment, but instead stumbled upon a very bloodied deer corpse, which was unsettling to say the least. I ran up a hill and crawled through an archway only to find a whole different kind of corpse. I crept up slowly, expecting something to jump out at me at any second, but
He's dead.
yeah, he was very dead. I tried to do what I was told, and pushed on less hesitantly, but when I rounded a corner, I almost became wolf dinner, holding my breath as I dove into the bushes and waited for the big lad to pass by. I felt less bold after that, and resorted back to hiding in the grass patches until I saw rising steam in the distance and had no choice but to put myself out in the open. It felt too good to be true when I was able to catch a breather, finally warming up a bit, and my suspicions were confirmed when howling filled my ears, and I turned to find the whole pack of wolves staring me down. Seeing as jumping into boiling hot pools of water wasn't an option, all I could do once again was turn and run, hearing hungry pants and heavy footsteps close behind me. I bolted across a fallen tree unthinkingly, but the whole thing collapsed beneath me and I fell yet again, though this time it was to my benefit, the wolves staring down at me but unable to follow. I limped along a cobble-lined path towards the cabin, getting inside to safety the only thing on my mind until a horrifyingly mauled deer crossed my path, and I watched as it disappeared into thin air. Totally normal bros camping trip things, obviously. Although at that point, with how much I had been through that day, I wasn't surprised that I was beginning to hallucinate. I slipped between a rock wall next to the cabin, and despite the lag, it was a beautiful scene with the bird and neon lights and night ambience. I entered the cabin, shutting the door behind me, and after ensuring there was nothing inside that was going to pop out at me, I was finally able to relax for the first time since the cave. I collected whatever I could from inside, not sure what would be useful since I didn't know crafting recipes or anything yet, and I found an adventurer's journal from the 80s. Pause to read if you'd like. They spoke about hiding from the wolves, fighting to start fires, finding shelter, and trying to gather food and make it out in the woods. There were some pages missing, so I had no idea what happened to them, whether they made it or not, but I had other things to worry about. I got a fire started while I sat and worried.
I hope you found Mike. I can't look for them right now. I'm too tired.
And then, exhausted, I looked around the warmly lit cabin once more before crawling into bed. If I thought I would have an uninterrupted sleep though, I was very wrong. A screech and then a sound akin to running out of battery in a certain beloved animatronic game made me jump, the sleep clock fading out and a chart labeled symptoms coming up. I was intrigued. I learned that any debuffs or negative stats can lower my sanity, as in the longer I suffered from a negative stat, such as lowered hunger or temperature, the faster my sanity would drop. If I took too long to deal with an ailment, my sanity timer would run out, and would do so repeatedly until I got rid of the debuff or improved my stats. Eventually, my brain would be filled 100%, which meant I couldn't take any more trauma, so the lowered sanity would manifest itself as a new symptom, which I would have to choose next time I went to sleep. So, as warned, I had two symptoms to choose between. 1. Psychosis delusion. I would start seeing phantom animals. The world would feel more dangerous, and it would be hard for me to tell whether I'm actually facing a threat or hallucinating, and it would also make hunting difficult. The delusions would disappear if I threw something at them, but if it turned out to be a real animal, I would be screwed. The second option, psychosis disorientation. I would start seeing things that weren't there, some of them easy enough to distinguish if they were obvious, but others would blend in perfectly with the environment, causing confusion and difficulty navigating, and I assume could also make for a scary situation while running from predators. I could get rid of the delusions by passing through them or throwing something at them, similar to the animal hallucinations. If you know my videos at all, you know that this was a no-brainer for me. The animal delusions screamed extra jump scares and being a million times more tense while outdoors, whereas the disorientation seemed less miserable as long as I was careful and watchful, so I went with the latter. And then it was morning. It was a beautiful, serene-looking day when I set off to hunt down my bag, aside from, the randomly disappearing brick walls, but I had a feeling that would be the least of my problems. At least I got a fun, laggy slide down a frozen stream. It didn't take long to find my canteen, thankfully, because I was super thirsty, but at the game's prompting I ate some snow, which then lowered my temperature. Cheers. I still needed to find water though, so I ran back the way I came, collecting plants and materials along the way while bitching about how thirsty I was. Instead, I ended up finding some unsettlingly familiar tracks, and suddenly the day seemed a lot less peaceful and pretty with the reminder that the bear was around. I cautiously sidestepped the trail and collected some water from a small pond, then when I rejoined the path, I found a trail of boot tracks as well. I was prompted to focus and use my instincts, highlighting certain resources and things of interest, which was handy, so I continued on harvesting things as I walked until I at last spotted my backpack hanging precariously off the cliffside. Just as I reached it, Joel's voice came in on the walkie-talkie, but all I could do was watch as it slid down the icy snow and off the edge of the rock. I picked up my backpack, which held a picture of a woman with the description, "She only smiles now when she talks about the baby." And
Last chance, she said. I'm so gonna mess it up.
This was not the trip this poor dude dreamed of. I didn't quite feel like going after the walkie and plummeting to my death off the cliff, so I turned back, relocating the tracks and following them once again. As I walked, I began stumbling across smears of blood in the snow, and things weren't looking too good. I did find another hot spring though, much to my relief, finally able to warm up a little bit and hopefully hold off the dropping of my sanity for a little bit longer. The tracks ended up leading me to a decrepit cabin, though the front door was locked, so I had to creep around the back and enter through a small basement hatch instead. The inside was just as rundown as the outside, cobwebs and junk strewn about everywhere, but my bigger concern was...
Damn it.
I just had to hope I was safe enough below ground while I looted the room, finding another note where someone had written about supply stash locations, some sort of rationing situation, and things at the harbor getting worse, before ending off the note with, "Hope you are still alive, M." I'm so curious to know if we'll learn more about all these little side stories when the full game comes out. I found my first tool, an axe, when I walked up the stairs to the jammed door, promptly using it to break it down, which in turn broke the axe.
If he hears this, I'm fucked.
I was nervous about that too, but after waiting for a little while, it didn't seem like the bear was lurking anywhere near, so I crafted another axe and kept moving. I followed the tracks as I was instructed, despite it going against every self-preservation instinct, and eventually they led me to a bridge.
The trail ends here. Could have been either Joel or Mike. Whoever it was, I hope they're safe. But now, the bridge doesn't look very stable.
Yeah, understatement of the year.
Oh, I'm hungry. The dead deer I saw, maybe there's still some meat left on it. I should eat something small first, just to keep me going.
And so I rummaged through my bag for something to eat, deciding on a can of beans. I ended up back near the hot spring after walking for a bit, so I foraged around there while I warmed up, the fading sunlight starting to make me feel uneasy when I continued on. I was so confused when I came up to the path I was convinced I had found the deer on the previous night, near the other section of hot springs, but there was just a rock wall, until I got closer and realized it was just one of my fun hallucinations I was warned about, not helping with my growing nervousness. Real or fake rock wall, the carcass was gone, but the prompt to find the carcass didn't relent, so I kept walking, really not enjoying being back near the corpse. Based on my terrifying sprint through the hot springs the other night, I operated under the assumption that I was back in wolf territory, clinging to those patches of tall grass like it was life or death, and maybe it was, who knows. A couple blood smears later, and I was crawling out the other side of some grass when I ended up a short distance away from a wolf, and I quickly shut my light off, plunging myself into darkness. Every little sound was making me jump though, the lack of vision making it worse, so I decided to risk keeping my flashlight on. It didn't seem to alert the wolves anyway.
Looks like wolves took it. Let's find out.
No. Listen, I don't care how hungry I am, there is nothing anyone is saying to get me to fling myself blindly into a literal wolf den in real life. But for the sake of the plot and the content, I guess I can pretend to be brave. There was an obnoxiously loud bird, and I remembered at the beginning of the game, I had thrown snow at a bird to distract the wolves, so I figured it was worth a shot to do the same thing again. Easier said than done, especially as my temperature began dropping enough to do some serious damage, but I eventually succeeded and hightailed it for the cave. Apparently I didn't wait long enough though, because the nearest wolf found me much more fascinating than the bird, and I quickly learned what it felt like to become wolf dinner. To my relief, this wasn't the end of the road like death is in the long dark, and it also didn't spawn me back in all the way over my bed like it did the first time I tried to play months ago. I don't even want to talk about the amount of time I spent running from the cabin to the cave over and over, but I will say I most definitely had the map memorized by the end of the play session. So I got the bird to distract the wolves again, yeah, first try, then steeled myself and ran. I chickened out at the icy slope though, not quite feeling like sliding directly into a set of sharp fangs, so I inched my way down, holding my breath. I barely breathed through this whole sequence, honestly, terrified of my hand twitching and making me move too quickly and causing my demise. I was tense, but I made it to the carcass, which was quite confusing to me because of the absolute hell of a time I had in the cave the other time I tried to play this game. It was, well... Maybe the first time, 10 times, had been a fluke, or I got lucky in this run, I'm not sure, but I was not going to question it too much. I was ready to get out of the cave and back to the safety of my cabin. It was a painfully slow crawl past all the very cute and asleep puppies, but I eventually hauled myself up a ledge and through a crevice with a sigh of relief. Axe in hand, not taking any chances, I looted a little supply corner, finding another missing part of the adventurer's journal I had found back at the cabin, this one titled Wolf 1. The author had written about a huge wolf, bigger than any he'd ever seen, tearing into one of his own pack members while he watched in horror from where he was seemingly hiding, waiting for the pack to go to sleep. Yeah, I'll pass, no thanks. I continued creeping through the tunnel, hopping down another ledge and coming face to face with one of the wolves. Heart thumping, I grabbed one of the torches sticking out of the barrel nearest me, lit it, and began swinging. It burnt out faster than I expected, and I couldn't even fully appreciate the wolf's moonwalk. the oh my god moonwalk because it's a wolf. I was too panicked trying to light another torch to even notice it when I was playing, but it was too late anyway, and I got shredded for a second time. I think that somehow though, the wolf jumping on me while the torch was still lit caused the game to glitch, because when I woke back up, my dude was saying, "I did it," and no wolf spawned in when I picked up a torch again, despite the scene's music playing. I was still terrified it was gonna appear out of nowhere, creeping my way around and looting the last area of the cave, and then the same
I did it!
dialogue came up and the music stopped, so that was that. I was kinda tempted to go back to my last save and try it again since it felt too easy, but I didn't feel like dealing with the sleeping wolves for a third time, so we're just gonna pretend it didn't glitch, okay? I slid through another crevice and then...
Wait!
I was fairly certain this was just me hallucinating, but I headed in the same direction nevertheless, and it took me out of the cave, looking over a body of water.
No footprints. Where did he go?
And there was the silhouette of a wolf in the distance.
And now I'm soaked. I think I saw a drying line in the shelter.
I needed to get warm and dry, so I started walking towards the general direction of the cabin, collecting plants on the way as usual. I wasn't sure if this noise was a bark or not, but it scared the shit out of me, so I bolted to the nearest patch of grass and waited, almost stepping out just as a wolf finally emerged from the trees. I held my breath as I walked right up to where I was hiding, certain it was going to jump out at me, but I guess I had gotten myself hidden fast enough because I lost my scent and walked back into the forest. I took that as my chance to bolt, heading back up the hill through the gap in the rocks again, then down through the valley, spotting the door that I hadn't been able to break through days before as my screen began flashing red, heartbeat in my ears. A delusion got the best of me, trying to run up a fallen log that disappeared when I reached it, but it was a blessing in disguise because having to turn away led me right to the hot springs. I crouched there until I had warmed up just enough to make the rest of the jog to the cabin, pieces of nature disappearing left and right as my sanity lowered, but I eventually made it back. I threw all my clothes on the drying line and made a fire as quickly as possible, putting some food on to cook. While I waited, my guy started monologuing, laying out some options for me.
He probably crossed that bridge. I wasn't ready before, but now, maybe I could follow him. On the other hand, Mike, I saw him. I could make a huge campfire, try to get his attention.
I was feeling adventurous and risky, so I decided to go with crossing the bridge, which was a decision the game immediately made me feel uncertain of.
That bridge looked unstable. Will I really be able to cross it?
But it would probably be fine, right?
If I fall, maybe I should turn back.
Alright, really not helping my confidence here. I did eventually get to the bridge though, my game looking like a PowerPoint with all the lag, but my dude is right.
You never know until you try.
So I went for it. And I mean, really, looking at that bridge, what did I expect? It was quite an abrupt ending, to be fair, but it's also only a prologue, so it's understandable. I was left with so many questions though, and I really wanted to know what would have happened had I gone with the other option, so despite my PC sounding like an airport and me feeling like I was watching a stop motion, I jumped back in and was brought back to the outside of the cave. I went through the same motions again, but this time when the option came up, I selected the campfire one, and then decided to nap while my clothes dried. Apparently that was the mistake of my life, because I woke up to the sounds of a bear trying to break down my door, the whole cabin blanketed in a weird light.
Holy fuck. Sure could use a blanket right now.
As the bear lumbered past the window, my screen faded to black, and then I was back at the end game screen. I'm not sure if this was a glitch, or if that's what was meant to happen when you select the campfire option, but either way, the game was lagging so much, and I didn't feel like sitting through another 3-minute loading screen, so I guess you'll just have to find out for yourself if there's another ending. So that was Winter Survival Prologue. I'm pretty sure the lag was my computer's fault, because I've seen playthroughs from other people that definitely weren't dealing with it to the extent I was, but that aside, I think this is going to be a super cool game. I'm a sucker for any sort of survival games, especially winter-based ones, so I'm really excited to see how this ends up turning out. I've looked at some of the devlogs, and it looks like they'll be introducing a ton of new animals, a building system, and so much more, so I'm really looking forward to that release date. I thought the graphics were beautiful, and the sound effects and voice acting scratched my brain just right, and I left the music off while recording, but it's super sick as well. There was definitely a sufficient creep-out factor, the sanity system is fascinating, and I was left with so many questions about the lore. I hope you enjoyed the video, despite the lag and a few hiccups, and thanks as always for being so patient with my non-existent, embarrassingly inconsistent upload schedule. Life is always lifing, so I'm just slowly plugging away at videos when I get the chance, and I appreciate endlessly all the love and support I've received. I have another 100 Days in the Long Dark video in the works, and I want to make a couple one-off videos like this one for some other games too, so we'll see what happens. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you had a lovely summer, and I will see you next time.